Why is God's judgment on America? And it is fairly obvious, given the events over the past year, that the judgment of God is upon America. God's chasing hand is on America. When you look at the economy and you look at the natural disasters that are happening on an unprecedented scale, there is no question that God's judgment on America. But this video is not about making a case for God's judgment on America. That will be for another video. What I'd like to talk to you about for the next 5 or 10 minutes is why God is judging America. What issues does He have with America? What bones does He have to pick? And while His ways are above our ways, which means that we don't know every nuance or every detail of that which is in the mind of God, what we can know is that God has left us clues in His Word, in the Scriptures, that can give us an idea of things that bring about His judgments. There are 3 major issues, I believe, in America that has brought this about. The first one is that Americans have, over the past 16 years, despised the truth. And I'm not talking about a particular theory of truth, but the idea of truth, the concept of truth, the idea of allegiance to truth, that we should seek to do what is right. Over the past 16 years, 2 administrations. You've had 2 corrupt administrations, both whom have twisted the truth, both of whom have been guilty of many lies. And by observing not only their lies, but how the American Republic has reacted to those lies, gives us a pretty clear view of a nation that has rejected truth. For 8 years we've had the abominations of President Clinton, the many lies on all sorts of things. One particular area that he had a bad problem with is that he was a womanizer. He slept with many women, had no problem sleeping around on his wife, had no problem committing adultery, and he had no problem lying through his teeth about it. It caught up with him one day in Monica Gate. And as people realized that not only was he guilty of that affair with Monica Lewinsky, but that he was caught being guilty. And he was not only caught being guilty of the affair, he was caught lying about it. He was in fact caught committing perjury. And yet many millions of Americans said it didn't matter that he was guilty of a perjury. It didn't matter if under the law he was entitled to impeachment. They took his side because they thought he was good for the economy. Most notably in this was the millions of feminists, including the hundreds of thousands of radical feminists who normally go for the jugular. I'm talking about the same people that when Bob Packwood lied in Congress over affairs he had 30 years previous, that they went for his throat. They demanded that he resign. And he ended up resigning from the Senate because he lied about affairs that he had 30 years ago. These same feminists went to Bill Clinton's defense. They defended him hard. They turned their back on their principles. They turned their back on what they said they believed in because it was politically expedient. And so people on the left showed that they were willing to turn their back on the truth for political expediency. They were found to be lawless, guilty of lawlessness. Now, lest you think this is just something on the left, when President George W. Bush came into power, one of the big issues that came to the forefront was opposition to gay marriage. And millions of conservatives opposed gay marriage, and they opposed it rightly so. There is no such thing as gay marriage. Homosexual unions are an abomination in the eyes of God. He ordained marriage as man and woman. The old cliche, it's Adam and Eve and not Adam and Steve, may sound corny, but it is true. And they were right in opposing it. And yet, when it was found out that American soldiers in Abu Ghraib were forcing Iraqi prisoners to commit acts of sodomy, they were forcing them to commit acts of lewd perversion, did these people cry foul? No, the very same people that campaigned hard against gay marriage looked the other way. And they looked the other way because it would make President Bush look bad. And they did damage control because they said we can't allow this to be used as a political weapon against George W. Bush. That we can't allow him to lose the election over this issue. And so they looked the other way. And so we've had 8 years, more years of conservatives looking the other way. Conservatives invoking the law when it was convenient, and evading the law when it was inconvenient. As a result of the 16 years of rule by both parties on both sides of the aisle, the result is that the American people are guilty of lawlessness, of invoking the law and invoking it hard when it's convenient, and opposing it viciously and evading it through whatever means, devices, or stratagems necessary when it is inconvenient. Now, our God is a God who judges impartially. We see it in Romans 2 and in the Psalms and in James. God is an impartial judge who judges without favor. God is consistent in His judgment. He is consistent in how He upholds His own laws. And what's good for the goose is good for the gander, is the old expression. And America was found guilty of lawlessness, found guilty of not being consistent with God's laws, of using them at our convenience. And so this is a major issue that was an offense to God. The fact that this is true of the American people. And this is why we are being judged. The second issue, and is just as critical, is that America now leads the world in the shedding of innocent blood. We have direct and exclusive guilt in 50 million abortion murders. And we have accessory guilt in the over 1 billion innocent lives in the world abortion costs because of the role that we have played. And the leadership role, that is, of the American abortion industry in promoting legal abortion throughout the world. In every modern war, the nation that was the least guilty won. The nation that was the most guilty did not win. When we fought in World War II against Nazi Germany, the Nazis were the most guilty of shedding innocent blood. They lost. The radical Islamists that had millions in bloodshed, who joined up with Hitler, they lost. The Middle East came under occupation. 1918, and was carved up after World War II. In the Cold War against the communists, Americans started to lose the high ground, but we still were less guilty than the Soviets. The Soviet Union lost that war through economic collapse. But now, in this war on terror that we're in, America has more blood guilt than the radical Islamists. Much of the blood guilt they have was atoned for through God's judgment on them in World Wars I and II. And the fact that after World War I, the Islamists lost their empire and became occupied by Western powers and by governments friendly to the West. What's happening is that America is losing that war, and America is soon to fall to the radical Islamists. God's judgment is on America. The radical Islamist plans that Osama bin Laden talked about how to cripple America's economy are already underway. $550 billion was pulled out, probably through Islamist-friendly governments, to subject us to economic collapse and the depression that is already underway.